Tales, and today we'll discuss absurdism. And this I'm discussing from this book, which is titled Literary Movements for Students. Okay, you can easily access this book from this website. I'm sorry, yeah, you can easily access this book from this website called LibGen. Library Genesis. Okay, just type there literary movements for students, and as it is written here, okay, just see it, and you will get this book. Now, why this book is important? Because it has covered all the literary movements that have happened till postmodernist era, like your beat movement and all, and it is providing you a comprehensive overview of all kinds of works that have written in different countries as well, right? So when you are reading a particular movement, you are not only acquainted yourself with the writers who are writing in this field, but at the same time you are acquainted yourself with the writers who are writing in different countries. Okay, many a times writers of different nations rather. Many a times it seems very overwhelming to cover the syllabus for your net, gate, set, of course, with respect to English literature, because it seems so vast, right? But if you are already acquainted or familiar, if you have familiarized yourself with few writers, then what will happen? That when you approach a particular nation, for example Russia or for Germany or America, you have already information of that particular writer, so things become little easy for you, because तब आपको ये लगेगा कि ओह इसको तो हम जानते हैं, we have already covered this in absurd literature or we have already covered this in beat generation group. Okay, so इससे क्या होगा, you will feel a confidence कि हाँ हमें कुछ चीज़ों के बारे में already पता है. So this book is of 900 plus pages, but this is a very important book, so I'll try to make a series of these literary movements from this book only, so that it will help you. Okay, nevertheless, let's study absurdism. Now, what is this term absurdism? Okay, as the keyword itself suggests, absurd. You know, when we say something is absurd, we mean that it is meaningless. Okay, something which is nonsensical, right? Ridiculous. These are the connotations that this word carries. Ridiculous. Okay, LOUS. Ridiculous. Just ignore the spelling. Okay, now see what they have written. Absurdism and its more specific companion term, the theatre of the absurd. Okay, absurdism, and the term that we will be particularly focusing here in this section is theatre of the absurd. It refers to the works of a group of Western European and American dramatists. So now you have seen that what literature or what in literature particularly we'll be focusing on the plays or the dramas, because it is the theatre of the absurd. Okay, so the writers who have written majorly in the Western European areas, which is your France, Germany, okay, and many others, and American dramatists. So we are covering Western European nations and the American dramatists. Now, writing and producing plays in the 1950s and early 1960s. So this absurdism or theatre of the absurd was in vogue in 1950s and 1960s. All right. Now, another important thing, the theatre of the absurd, okay, was coined by critic Martin Esslin. You have to remember this name. Martin Esslin was the critic who has coined this term, theatre of the absurd. Now, which theatre is called theatre of the absurd? Okay, which has these common features. Which common features? It's a new style of drama that seemed to ignore, remember this term, ignore theatrical conventions. Okay, we have certain theatrical conventions. For example, if you see Elizabethan dramas, then there are certain conventions that the dramatists were following. For example, it is in 5 acts, okay, and the 5 acts are divided into different scenes, right? Then you have to follow certain unities, like the unity of place, unity of time, right, unity of action. Then we have plot, subplot. So there are certain conventions that you see in Elizabethan dramas. But what theatre of the absurd, what the playwrights doing here, the dramatists here are ignoring those theatrical conventions and thwart audience expectations. So what audience expect from a particular drama, they were actually thwarting their expectations. Now it is characterized by a departure from realistic characters, right? See, what is the purpose of literature? The purpose of the literature is to present things as they are or to present things as they ought to be, right? Now they are completely departing from the realistic characters and situations, right? The plays offer no clear notion of the time or place. in which the action occurs because they are not following any theatrical convention. So they are also ignoring the unity of action and unity of time, and of course unity of place. Characters are often nameless and seems interchangeable. So they are nameless characters. They are not taking any they are not given any names. Okay, now events are completely outside the realm of rational motivation and may have a nightmarish quality commonly associated with surrealism. Now what is this surrealism? It is a post world war movement that features dream sequences and images from the unconscious, often sexual in nature. So this is so they are depicting something which is not realistic in nature. They are depicting things which are having nightmarish quality. Okay, nightmarish quality that no one wants to imagine to happen to them, right? Now at other times both dialogues and incidents may appear to the audience as completely nonsensical, even farcical. Now when I'm reading this, the play or not play, a particular movie is coming to my mind that I have just watched. It is Animal movie. Okay, so this movie has such a grand style. It's such a magnanimous movie in its visual presentation, the songs, the trailer, or things like that. But when you actually watch the movie, you see the dialogues are so nonsense. It is making no sense. The action is making no sense. Okay, so everything is happening which is nonsensical in nature. People are killing each other, right? There is one person who is killing every other person on the stage, on the set, but there is no police, there is no law and order. So things are actually nonsensical and farcical in nature. So you can term this movie as absurd. Okay, so however beneath the surface the work explore theme of loneliness and isolation. Now you see that how this movie Animal has also explored the themes of loneliness and isolation, as the critics are justifying it that this is how bad parenting result into, right? If you have watched the movie, you know that how that main protagonist Ranbir Kapoor was ignored by his father in his childhood. So because of this isolation, he has become what he has become in the movie. Now of the failure of individuals to connect with others in any meaningful way. Yeah, right. And of the senselessness and absurdity of life and death. So senselessness, you don't know what is happening, why the things are happening, and absurdity of life and death. Anyone can die at any time. Okay, you have no control over death, you have no control over life. So all these things are part of this kind of theater, which is your theater of the absurd. Now the writers which are associated with this absurdism are Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, Jean Genet, Arthur Adamov, Harold Pinter, and Edward Albee, as well as a number of lesser known dramatists. So these are the famous dramatists of this genre, that is the absurdism. And the avant-garde nature of absurdist writing contributed in part to its short life as a literary movement. So features of the plays that seemed completely new and mystifying to audiences in the 1950s when absurdist works first appeared soon become not only understandable but even commonplace and predictable. So this movement gained a lot of prominence during the 1950s. Okay, with the exception of Eugene Ionesco, most playwrights abandoned the absurdist style after the 1960s. Okay, so it was in vogue in 1950s and 1960s, and after 1960s all these dramatists that I have just mentioned, they have actually stopped writing these themes, except this man Eugene Ionesco. Most of the plays which were written by Eugene Ionesco were of this genre only. Okay, absurdism. Now, with the exception of Ionesco, most playwrights abandoned the absurdist style after the 1960s. However, many of the individuals' plays were later considered classics of European and American drama. So, most of the dramas which were produced by these dramatists are actually considered as the classics of European and American drama. ऐसा नहीं है कुछ भी produce कर दिया, they turned out to be classics. Okay. Now, these are the representative authors. So, what you have to do, you have to read all those authors. Your first is, I'm so sorry. Okay. This is your absurdism, and these are the authors: Arthur Adamov, Edward Albee. You have to read about these authors. Okay. All right. Now we have Fernando Arrabal, Jean Genet, Samuel Beckett, Wycliffe Havel, Harold Pinter, Eugene Ionesco, Tom Stoppard. Now the representative works of this theatre are The American Dream, Endgame, The Bold Soprano, The Garden Party, The Homecoming, The Cheers, The Maids, Waiting for Godot, Ping Pong. Let's analyze this text, okay? Waiting for Godot. It is also part of the theatre of the absurd. Now, what happened in this play? Now, the most famous and most critically acclaimed work associated with absurdism is Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, produced in 1953 in Paris as Un attended Godot. So, it was written in French, right, and translated into English a year later, that is in 1954. So, it was written in 1953 and translated in 1954. This is how you read these important works, right? You have to remember each and everything. Now the setting is sparse, almost vacant, and the characters are two tramps. So there are two tramps called Vladimir and Estragon who do little except wait. So what they are doing in the entire play, they are just waiting. That's why the name waiting. Now for whom they are waiting? They're actually waiting for Godot, and there are and a number of interpretations that who is this Godot actually. And the play revolves around these two tramps, Vladimir and Estragon. What they are doing, they are waiting and waiting for two successive nights for someone who never appears. So you see the nonsensical nature, that they are doing a meaningless thing. They are waiting for someone who never appears. Now, while waiting, they engage in a series of apparently random discussions, some invoking philosophy and a variety of antics, from taking off their shoes to eating a carrot, what we should do, whether we should take off the shoes or not, whether we should eat carrot or not. So that seemed vaguely reminiscent of a comedy routine or a vaudeville act. They also attempt suicide twice, right, but fail each time. So life and death, meaninglessness of life. Now at the end of the play, when Godot has still not appeared, the characters agree to leave, at least according to their limited dialogue, but the stage directions contradict their word by insisting that they do not move. So they were saying that okay, now this Godot is not coming, so we will leave, but the play ends with this dialogue that they do not move. So one of the most important productions of Waiting for Godot took place in San Quentin prison in 1957, performed by the members of the San Francisco Actors Workshop. Several critics have commented on the enthusiastic reception the prisoners gave the play, suggesting that they seemed to instinctively grasp its meaning. At the same time, audiences apparently more educated and more sophisticated were confused by the play's unconventional nature. Okay, so many critics believe Waiting for Godot is Beckett's most important work, citing its influence on the theatre of the absurd and on contemporary drama in general. So this is about Waiting for Godot. Now, what is important here, that which themes these dramas usually cover? It is absurdity, cruelty and violence, domination, futility and passivity, materialism, language, loneliness and isolation. Okay, now there are so many important things that you have to read on your own regarding this absurdism. Now there are certain movements which are similar to absurdism. It is Dadaism. Okay, and then another one is Dadaism only. Now the historical context. Why? What need arise that people started writing in this style, absurd style? Okay, see what happened in 1914. We have First World War, right? First World War started till 1918, but it's okay. Things were not impacted majorly by these wars. But what happened in Second World War, that is from 1939 to 1945, things have drastically changed because of the use of the nuclear weapons. Now there were number of deaths, and because of that that explosion that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So things have changed drastically and people started believing that anything can happen to them at any time. Okay, so let's see what is the historical roots. Okay, these are the historical what is the historical context, not roots. Absurdism can be traced to the beginning of the 20th century. The movement reached its peak in the years immediately following World War II. Okay, a war of catastrophic proportions that saw the armies of fascist Germany overrun most of Europe and the Japanese attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor. An estimated 48 million people in Europe were killed and millions were becoming refugees. So the meaninglessness of life. Okay, we don't know, any time a bomb can come and kill us. Any time a virus can come and kill us. So all these things started making people believe the uncertainty of life, the meaninglessness of life, right? So bombs turned cities to rubble. As the Allied forces liberated the concentration camps at the end of the war, Europeans and Americans were confronted by the enormity of the Holocaust, Germany's final solution for Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, and political prisoners. All these things have actually changed the very scenario of society, right? That how someone can kill so many people, what kind of power they possess, right? The homosexuals, political prisoners, so things which were which were happening in the past as well, in the history as well, but these things were not at the forefront, they were at the background. Now all these things are openly happening. Okay, so this is something which is giving people the feeling of hopelessness and futility and meaninglessness, right? So that's why in the arts, the social and community concerns of the depression years and the war years gave way to introspection and individuals' visions. In some cases, artists began to concentrate on form rather than content. So, your form is important. What you are presenting is not important, because in life things are happening which are not important, right? So, abstract art, cubism, surrealism, expressionism, with this emphasis on individual expression, replace artistic modes tied to political themes. In Hollywood, the optimistic and patriotic films of the war years were replaced in the late they were replaced in the late 1940s and early 1950s by film noir, a dark, gritty, and urban genre that exposed the menacing underside of American life. The Cold War also inspired a host of monster and horror films that served as allegories for the potential invasion by a foreign company. So the Cold War that happened between USSR and America, right? So everyone is always suspicious of any big event that can happen in their country. Okay, now when you contrast this is very important, compare and contrast. So the absurd thing that were happening then has changed so many things. So in the midst of Cold War, Americans are fearful of a nuclear attack by Soviet Union. Fallout shelters are designed and built, and school children regularly facing duck and cover procedures in the event of an air raid. So this happened in 1950s, and today when they are talking about 2001 terrorist attack on New York City and Washington DC, many Americans still live in fear that terrorists may strike again at any time, anywhere in the country. Okay, in the 1950s, the Soviet Union and the United States engaged in Cold War as two enemies with nuclear capability, each stockpiling weapons in an attempt to achieve nuclear superiority. And today also we have seen that how Soviet Union has separated into individual countries. The largest of these, Russia, is now an ally of the United States in the space program and the war against terrorism. Now in the 1950s, we have seen soldiers returning from World War II. Okay, so people are starting families and leading to the post-war baby boom, right? Many of soldiers returned back to their normal life, and they were planning their families, and we have seen baby boom. And now we have seen that things are also changing. Things are completely changing. How? Because now women have delayed marriages to concentrate on careers, and as the divorce rate climbs, television situation comedies are more likely to focus on a single life rather than on families. So that's why we have seen these plays like Friends, Will and Grace. Friends, I'm talking about that sitcom, American sitcom. Okay, so as is the society, as will be the representation. So this is your absurdism. Now it seems very easy that it's easy, but you have to remember things for your exam. Okay, so what you have to do, that you have to read each of these writer. All right, for example, here this is Arthur Adamov. You should know about it, that Adamov was born in Russia, so he is a Russian playwright. Okay, he's a Russian playwright. The family moved to Paris, and what all happened to him, right? Then Edward Albee, the American dramatist, you have to read about him. So what I'm going to do is this, that I have just given you a glimpse or a gist of absurdism. Now you have to read this. Download the book, read about absurdism today, so that when we'll move to next movement, then you can read the next movement with me. Okay, you can then do it. So what it will do, that it will kind of give you a comprehensive overview, right? So I'm giving you a stimuli. Now you have to respond to it by reading on your own. All right, thank you so much. See you in the next video with another movement.